The Mysterious Comet, Chapter 3, Distant Catastrophes and Weather Reactions. The sifting out of new atmospherics is a gradual process whereby sooner or later they are captured and go to recruit the prevailing winds of the area which they thus invade. The prevailing winds, for instance, in the west of Europe are southwesterly, following the line of the Gulf Stream and beginning off the coast of Florida. If a northeasterly hurricane strikes this system, it will blow itself out and gradually return along much the same direction as the southwest wind, so that sooner or later the new atmospherics are dispersed over a very considerable area. Weather conditions in the British Isles are generally affected only very indirectly, if at all, by meteoric phenomena in regions far distant, such as, say, the Pacific or Indian Oceans. But there are occasions, such as the eruption of Krakatoa in 1883, when its effects are thought to be felt in parts as far distant as Europe and Australia. My records of the year 1925 embrace a considerable variety of meteoric phenomena. Not that 1925 was a very exceptional year like 1880, 1889 and 1903. It was an active year with a few illuminating events, and so I shall venture to deal briefly with it. On February 24, Mount Popocatépetl, Mexico, burst into eruption, to the terror of the neighbouring Indian population, as it had been quiescent for nearly 400 years. This eruption coincided with severe weather in the United States, but Europe was not affected. On March 15th, there was a fierce earthquake in Yunnan, China, where a great black cloud rolled up, and this again did not influence Europe meteorologically, for the earlier months of the year in Britain were unusually fine. After May 23rd, for a little time, the weather was definitely subjected to a considerable adverse influence, which was experienced also in France and Spain. Can we find a reason? May 23rd, 1925 witnessed two events. The one was an earthquake in Toyooka, Japan, which offered little of novelty, and the other was that known as the Penmarch Brittany cyclone and a tidal wave in the Bay of Biscay. The latter was followed by atmospheric disturbances over a large area. June, recovering from Penmarch, and most of July were exceptionally fine months, and a drought in Great Britain lasting until the end of the first week in July, when there were tremendous downpours over vast areas, showing a depressed barometer. On June 29, there was an earthquake in St. Barbara, California, and the end of the first week in July in England saw storms and heavy rain. August was the month in which the island of Santorini in the Aegean Sea caused a lot of bother. On August 9th, an earthquake of some magnitude was reported from Santorini, and the minor volcano suddenly born was in eruption. On the 21st of this dangerous month, there was another eruption at Santorini, and a new islet was born, also another severe earthquake. On the same day, Mount Vesuvius suddenly saw fit to burst into eruption, which suggests that two meteors were drawn into these particular localities. Indeed, August, a month of meteoric visitation, the month in which, within modern records, more serious calamities have taken place than in any other month, was very lively. Apart from Santorini Island and Vesuvius, on the 9th, the volcano in Ometepe Island, Lake Nicaragua, burst into violent eruption, and on the 13th, the volcano Shirane, Japan, was equally afflicted. The weather in Great Britain responded at least to Santorini and to Vesuvius. On August the 10th, Santorini was early the 9th. There were violent cyclones or meteoric storms in Holland and Germany, and on the 11th there were serious and violent thunderstorms in East Anglia, full of electrical force and executing severe damage. If a meteor fell through the skies on Santorini from northeast to southwest, which, so far as geography is concerned, could very easily follow a trajectory of or from the direction of the North Pole to fall in the Aegean, it would be capable of releasing part of its gases somewhere about the latitude of the British Isles, Holland, and northern Germany, which would condense and move westwards, hence occasioning the cyclonic storms of August 10 and 11. For example, the cyclone that swept Holland on the 10th was sudden and lasted little more than a quarter of an hour. Yet in those few minutes it wrought unprecedented havoc. Church steeples were thrown down by a mighty unseen arm. A big garage was blown 300 yards. The town of Borculo, with 5,000 inhabitants, was left a mass of ruins. In one village, 60 houses were totally wrecked. A little later in Norfolk and Lincolnshire, farms and houses were struck by the vivid lightning, and the storm was preceded by darkness and a deluge of water fell. On August the 21st, the new seismic volcanic occurrences took place in Santorini, and also the fresh eruption of Vesuvius, and again on the 22nd. About 1 day later, England was afflicted with violent thunderstorms coming from the east and stretching from Newcastle on Tyne to the Channel Islands, and from Lincolnshire to Shropshire. The Evening News reported that at least 35 million tonnes of rain fell over the London area alone, and over 2 inches descended on Portsmouth. This severe depression was felt more along the eastern coastline than inland, and in Lincolnshire, usually a dry county, a stop was put to all harvesting and a large quantity of corn was ruined. Wales escaped this deluge, as was the West generally. August 24th, 1925, was the date when a severe earthquake, accompanied by the worst cyclonic storm within living memory on that region, swept the Persian Gulf. A bushwire telegram to the Daily Gazette, Karachi, reported that 7,000 persons were killed, and the pearl fishing fleet was almost completely destroyed. Evidently, a number of meteors crossed the Earth's path. Evidently, a number of meteors crossed the Earth's path because almost simultaneously a tremendous cyclone struck the Bay of Genoa, executing severe damage, and a tornado in the Atlantic off the east coast of the United States set up an enormous storm, wrecked hundreds of houses, and killed many people. Daily Express, October the 27th. 7 transatlantic liners arrived in New York from 1 to 4 days late owing to the storm. On the 26th, England felt the repercussions of these events, for gigantic seas swept the coast and did great damage among other matters, breaching a hole in the Sidmouth seawall, with the results that hundreds of tons of the promenade were washed away. It seems probable that the storm over the British Isles was more closely related to the cyclone in the Bay of Genoa than the tornado over the other side of the Atlantic, for as stated before, these events usually follow along lines of longitude and not of latitude. November was also prominent. On November the 10th, 3 seismological stations far distant from each other recorded severe vibrations. Dalhousie University, Nova Scotia, estimated it to be 5,000 miles distant. The Trendani Observatory in Italy recorded waves for 4 hours and estimated it about 7,500 miles distant, while Mr. J.G. Shaw of West Bromwich recorded it as 8,000 miles distant, probably under the ocean in the vicinity of the East Indies. Wherever the earthquake took place, if at all, no intimation reached the public. It is possible that a celestial body passed the earth in close contact, but did not strike it, or it is possible it fell at a deserted part of the Atlantic Ocean. Great Britain on the 10th was suddenly in the grip of a wave of intense cold. Heavy snow fell in Essex, Buckinghamshire, Huntingdonshire, Hertfordshire, and in Northamptonshire. 4 inches of snow fell in the Medway Valley, a most unusual occurrence. All Lockhars, near St Andrews, 23 degrees of frost were registered. The sun temperature fell 39 degrees in 24 hours. London experienced a black overhead fog. The phenomena may or may not have been related to the seismograph records. Again, in the same month, we find a set of circumstances which connects untoward events in Italy with meteorological excesses further north. On Saturday, 28th, a tremendous cyclone swept Italy from Naples to Sicily, and a tidal wave laid waste large areas on the coast, doing heavy damage and causing much loss of life. The Daily Mail's own correspondent at Rome said the storms, quote, were of a violence never before known in these districts. Houses were wrecked, harbours were damaged, portions of the railway near the coast swept away, and several rivers burst their banks. The air was alive with hurtling tiles, bricks, chimney stacks, branches of trees, and wreckage of all kinds. At Bagnara, the tidal wave destroyed warehouses, houses, and shipping, and cut the railway line. The cyclone was northeasterly and caused a tidal wave. It began just beyond Vesuvius, and it is my explanation that a meteor drawn in towards the volcano missed the target. We shall duly see this is of no rare occurrence, and struck the sea, with the resultant damage. Had it hit Vesuvius instead, there would have been another eruption. This view is explanatory of weather elsewhere. Suddenly, Europe to the north was plunged in violent snowstorms, gales, and cold. Northern Italy suffered heavy falls of snow, as also Switzerland, Germany, and Denmark, but not Sweden and Norway. France suffered intense cold in the east, centre, and south, snow even falling in Nice. Austria was plunged in snowstorms. In England, a blizzard struck the country on the Saturday, causing deep snow drifts in places and disorganising railway traffic. Thunder and lightning accompanied the blizzard in Yorkshire and Norfolk, thus giving it a magnetic character. If we assume that a meteor which fell to earth off the coast of Italy brought with it these atmospherics, which condensed from the time it approached Earth's air above Denmark, the condensation of its gases, containing much oxygen, would descend upon the adjacent regions with little or no premonitory warnings, and take the direction from whence reports were sent subsequently to the Daily Mail. Cause and effect in meteoric impacts cannot be ignored by any efficient observer of meteorology. It is true that inferences must be drawn in certain cases, but once the work of meteors is recognized, as it should be by all engaged in the sciences of astronomy or meteorology, the conclusion becomes inevitable, and the importance of meteors in planet building also becomes evident. I mentioned in passing the Penmarsh cyclone of May 23, 1925. Its importance as affecting subsequent examination of the bed of the Bay of Biscay demands a more detailed description.